It's always a random Tuesday. Let it be when you and your boyfriend break up or the greatest player of all time retires. It's always going to be on a random Tuesday. Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury Show, where we're going to break down the GOAT's retirement right after this break. What's up, Steven? Long time no see. I wish we were gathered under more joyous circumstances, but I guess happy Tuesday to you and yours. How you doing up there in the studio?
Doing good. Needless to say, had to flip a switch really quick from the ingratiation of Alyssa Thomas to Diana Taurasi's exit. It's been an abrupt shift, but we are here to speak about just genuinely one of the best basketball talents ever. And I'm looking forward to just kind of giving her as much of a salute as we can from our positions. How you feeling today?
You know, I was not up in Phoenix for the Alyssa Thomas introductory presser, so I was watching all of your guys' clips live online, and in between the clips was that little "she's going on the View" announcement, and it was slid in there it was a sneak diss for sure, and I was like, okay, that's the type of show you go on to announce you're having a baby or you're retiring, and there's really not many other options, so I'm like, and then next thing you know, Alexa Philippou is coming through with the news. So here we are. Like you said, it was a quick shift. To say chaos has ensued, I feel like is an understatement for the Valley sports world right now. But like I said, greatest of all time, and she has done it all here in Phoenix. And so to say that this is, tugging at the heartstrings of the Valley, I think is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? Like genuinely, there's so much to talk about, whether it be on the court, whether it be personality, whether it be her legendary work ethic. Um, where you want to take this thing?
Well, let's just start with number one overall pick out of the University of Connecticut. Um, you know, she had a legendary career with UConn. So why don't we start there? She started her career. Goodness, like I said, guys, chaos has ensued, and it shows all over my face at this exact moment. But yeah, number one overall pick out of UConn, and done it all with Phoenix Mercury. So let's start at the beginning of her professional career then.
Let's get to it. I can start by rattling off some numbers, and then we can kind of document as we go along. All time leader in scoring, 10,000. And just start there. It doesn't even matter what three numbers come after that. 10,000 points. Like, imagine doing anything in your life in a successful manner 10,000 times. And the fact that she scored 10,646 points over the course of her career is insane. Especially when you add the context of with women's basketball, the quarters being shorter, the volume of minutes not necessarily being the same as other styles of basketball that people may consume. And then you also add to on top of all of that, the attention that she gets from checking in, not even actually being on the court, from checking in to then actually being on the court, whether the ball's in her hands or she's working to a spot to then receive the ball. To score that many points, it's absurd. I don't think there's a better spot to start than that. So I'll go ahead and pass the rock to you. And you can kind of speak on just how prolific and dynamic and one of a scorer DT was over the course of her career.
think it's so interesting because at the beginning of the season, you and I spoke about how special it was going to be able to watch Diana off the ball, and it was exactly that. And just because her scoring wasn't to the volume of which it maybe has been over the last 20 years, how could it have been at the age that she's at? But like she still shoots at a ample rate, and she doesn't, she's not one that you expect to watch miss. As a basketball fan, we get to experience a lot of experiences with certain players, and Diana's is one that's usually just on the upward trend. And her shooting is really, really at the center of her skill set.
Yeah, the shooting is just different. Where some players have a more kind of rainbowish arc to their shots. Some people have a little flatter. Hers is very much in the middle of that, and the accuracy with which her shots hit the back iron of the rim on the way through the net. Like there's just little things about Diana's game, from her swagger to her shooting form and the rotation, the evolutions of the basketball when it leaves her fingertips going to the basket. She's just so different from so many different angles and respects. I think one of the biggest things you can speak to in terms of, if you're looking at cosigns, which she certainly has never needed, but you started with speaking to her and UConn, naturally Gino Auriemma, all of the successes that they saw together. That's one basketball legend in and of himself right there. It transitioned to another, and the nickname that she got, that she earned from one of her peers in the basketball hemisphere, the late great Kobe Bryant, giving her the White Mamba nickname. I think that's as big a cosign in basketball as you could get, especially considering the timing of which it came and how she was still just at the highest of highs and never really saw like a drop off in any capacity.
No, heavy on that. You never saw a drop off in any capacity. And, I think we literally spoke on this when Stephen and I spoke privately yesterday. Like the biggest elephant in the WNBA room has been this retirement announcement. Is it coming? Is it not? Now it's been made. And I personally feel as though she's done it at the right time. She's done it on her own terms, and she never let her game get away from her, and she always stayed at the top, and when she felt like she couldn't be at the top anymore, she stepped back, and I think that that really shows her character and how much she really loves basketball.
I think it does. And I think that naturally, if we're talking about scoring with Diana, and I have to take a deep breath before I say it, all time leading 3-point shooter, 1,447 3-pointers made over the course of her career. Erika, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about that number of 3-pointers made, and naturally whose fingertips those shots left in Diana Taurasi?
It sounds like a 2K stat line.
I
Like,
don't
not
disagree with
real,
you at all.
you know? Like, that's something I put up with my player for fun, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
no, Diana's doing it very much in real life, and I you can't even, you can't, quantify what she's meant to the team, and that number, you can try to it with that, but it doesn't even come close to what I think she's meant to the league as a whole, and how much she's really progressed the game of basketball for women. And the 3-point shooting, yeah, is a huge part of it, and it's probably been one of the most fun aspects of her game to watch, but it's just a small fraction of what she's really really done.
yeah, I could not agree with that more. When looking at Diana's 3-point shooting, for me, it has to be split up into multiple categories. First is the on ball. She is by title, she's split between shooting guard and point guard, generally a combo guard, and limitless in doing that, whether it's initiating offense, working off of screens and pin downs, working in isolation. Doesn't matter what context. She can get her shot off in any context, going left or right, off of multiple dribbles, off of one dribble with no dribbles, off of movement either direction, off of any variation of screens. like truly limitless and without weakness. I feel like she maybe one of the best ways to encapsulate her dynamic as a scorer, and especially if we're talking about her 3-point shooting, is that not only could she dictate with the threat of her shot, but she was also a counter puncher with her shot as well. Being able to get to step backs, being able to work off the ball. You just could not stop her from getting up shots on goal. And it, I don't like if you don't play basketball in some capacity, it's a little bit harder to fathom. But when you know that you have 5 sets of eyes, make it 6 because the head coach is always watching her on top of that from the opposing team that are trying to stop you from scoring when everyone in the arena knows that you're going to be getting the ball more often than not, and to be able to deliver to the levels of success that she saw, it's just insane. And if we're looking at it, like I said, specifically with her on the ball and off the ball, the tough shot making, she never met a shot that she didn't like or that she wasn't comfortable taking. And I think that in and of itself is something that put her in a position to always dictate to her opponents. And then if we look at it off the ball, I don't know if there is a better off-screen shooter in addition to the on-ball stuff than Diana Taurasi. I think when you talk about the on-ball and the off the ball, now you're looking at somebody that's generally just hard to guard. Because if she has the ball, she's getting double teamed. She could care less about double teams at times and is arguably the best tough shot maker in the league's history and arguably in basketball's history, quite honestly. And then you look at the off the ball stuff, and Kevin, we can go ahead and cue up my conversation I had with her and how she kind of really helped to evolve the process of players off the ball and just making the game that much more nuanced on offense. So, not specific to your team, just generally speaking, the evolution of W basketball, a lot of guard screening. I feel like you've been one of the more effective doing so in the latter end of your career. Can you just speak to how that kind of really just adds more nuance to the game?
Yeah, I think we've taken a lot of different approaches on how to get open and create mismatches and advantages. And I think the guard to guard really wasn't utilized much, probably my first 15 years. And I think now it's giving you a different way of getting a mismatch that you want. People going downhill. Chicago does a great job of doing it with Kennedy and getting you, off kilter and takes advantage of that. And I think we've benefited a lot from that, as a lot of teams do.
Yeah, that's just another wrinkle in terms of her style of play. She's one of the first players to be used in that manner in the W side of things. And because of the gravity that she has, whether she was getting it or she was opening up her teammates, it just makes for offense, always creating advantages like she mentioned. And she just remarkable, special. I'm just kind of replaying plays in my head when I think of her name and her style of play. Under Sandy Brondello, one of the plays they ran most often out of horns, which is one of Espo's favorite sets. He'll love to hear me talk about this, where they put BG at one elbow, Diana at the other elbow. Diana sets the screen on the ball and then flows into a flare screen off of Brittany Griner and then flowing to one of the wings. And she usually gets a catch there. She can shoot it off of that, she can drive it off of that, or she can go right in the pick and roll with Brittany Griner there. Like that's as simple a play as it gets. There's nothing like crazy complex about it, but the fact that she was involved in tandem with Brittany Griner, who we can inevitably speak to if we're speaking to Diana Taurasi's career, just it just encapsulates how great she is.
It is, I love this comment from Chris. DT played NBA ball in the W to an extent, physical with finesse. I think that it's exactly, point on the bullseye there. Like she got what she wanted and the way she wanted it. And I think there's not a whole lot of other players that can do that. And, just thinking to the conversations you guys had with Nick Urin and Alyssa Thomas earlier today and talking about positionless basketball, I don't think those conversations are had today without the style of which, Diana played over the last 20 years are even possible to be had.
Yeah, there it's not possible to be had. And I think something else that can be mentioned with that as well is her influence on players that have come after her. I think there are a ton of, I won't necessarily say disciples, but players that clearly have watched film of Diana Taurasi, how she operates in certain spaces, how she gets to her shots against certain defenses, and just how to generally be successful in a sustained manner. Someone else in the chat mentioned longevity. That's probably one of the other adjectives that would accurately describe just her greatness. To be great is cool. Like, it's few people do that, but even fewer people do it as long as she did. And like, I just find myself laughing just recounting so many different moments over the course of her career. Um, and as we kind of speak to things that just made her unique from anyone else, you got to talk about the text, right?
I
Steven,
literally,
it's funny. I don't mean to interject, but it's funny because the Phoenix Mercury just tweeted a picture of DT sticking her tongue out and it said, "Imagine how much less fun this league would be without 122 more technicals in its history."
There it is. There it is. And I like, it's funny because of her personality. You could tell she was never like going the extra mile to try to prove a point, putting up a facade. Like, she was generally just being herself. And the way in which she played is one thing. The way in which she wore her heart on her sleeve, proverbially and literally, is something that was contagious for the rest of her teammates. And like, I feel like that was genuinely a part of her leadership, which is something else we'll have to get to another thing. But yeah, the text. Do you have a most memorable text from her, or like what
you
do you
know,
think
you
about
have
when
to
you speak
think
to her text?
you have to think immediately to the wobble. I'll meet you in the hotel lobby. That's obviously so high on the list. I feel like for everybody, love or hate DT, that is one of the funniest moments of the entire WNBA's existence, in my opinion. And the wobble in itself was such a interesting dynamic between the teams and the league and it, as a whole. But that meet me in the lobby was rich. It provided laughs for years to come for the league, and I think a lot of refs probably remember that moment for them as well.
I would love to hear confessions on conversations had with Diana from refs' perspectives. Naturally, in the heat of battle is when you're gonna get the most direct, I'll say, the most direct Diana that you could possibly get. And I'm pretty sure that would be a fun podcast, let alone a book to read or consume in any type of capacity. For me, there's no specific technical foul scenario, but just watching her whenever there was back and forth between opposing players, whether she was directly involved or she's on the fray. And I think there's someone took a picture of it from last season where, as fate will have it, she's not directly involved, but she's like right in the middle of it all, and she just has the biggest smile like a kid in the candy shop. Like, that just speaks
If
to
you
how
ask me,
she.
that was probably her moment where she's like, this is it. I'm good. I don't need to continue anymore. I've had my fun and it ends here, you know?
I think it's as poetic a basketball thing is with Diana. That's not her putting the ball in the bucket as it gets, because she was never scared of any smoke in any capacity, any type of smoke from opponents, any type of adversity that might come up over the course of a game, the course of a series. Talk about the game winners, talk about the success in the playoffs, the championships. Like, she's never been one to run from smoke. She honestly, it seems like she relishes those moments more than almost anybody else in women's basketball history for sure, but generally speaking, pretty much in all of basketball as a whole.
I don't think there's any single basketball player, man or woman, that you could equate to Diana's winning mentality when it comes to fighting for what she believes in on the court.
I don't think that's inaccurate at all. And just kind of speaking a little bit more in depth to her and her career, second most games played ever, 565. That number doesn't even do her entire career justice for me personally, because you add in all of the Olympics, you add in all of the FIBA stuff that wasn't Olympics directly, and then you add into, obviously even more so when you speak to her, you have to speak to the international impact and all of the winning that she did in the international circuit, to which she then would double down and come back home stateside, or not home, but come back stateside and do that here with Phoenix. So much basketball played, so much greatness. Like, these numbers, just as arbitrary numbers, are loud, and then you contextualize it, and it gets like a times a million multiplier to it. Just special, man, special.
We've talked all off season about how it feels like this is an end of an era in the Valley, but truly today it feels like the book has closed and it's a a whole new book now, and it's pretty crazy. Truthfully, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I didn't think it was going to happen, and now we're sitting here going over stat record books.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. I don't think there is another player that is more synonymous with a singular franchise than Diana. Like there might be players that rival her in terms of that, but when you think Phoenix Mercury, there's no other name that's gonna come to mind first than Diana Taurasi. That's for many reasons, but I think the culture part that she left for the players that come through the franchise, even the coaches that come through the franchise going forward, there's a precedence. There's a bar that's set. And I feel like naturally with the facilities being named after her, which another salute to Matt Ishbia for getting that done in a timely manner so that she could reap those benefits, but also see that transition point happen as she exits out of her career as well. All these just little things just make the Mercury franchise that much more synonymous with her name and vice versa as well.
Well, I think you said it, the facility is a reminder, a lifelong reminder for this franchise that of the legacy that she left behind. And like you said, I'm very, very glad that she got an opportunity to at least get her flowers while she was still able to and reap the benefits of, what she did for the franchise and the league, three-time champion, like what she did for the league is no small feat. And so her getting the benefits of everything that she's done, it just speaks to how much the franchise has valued her even through her later years of basketball.
For sure. Something else we have to speak to when we're talking about Diana Taurasi and all of the attention that she got for her scoring, for her 3-point shooting prowess, for just the ever-present threat to put the ball in the basket that she was. Her ability to also raise the level of her teammates, not just in leadership, but in putting them in positions and how she goes about spraying the basketball around the court as well. And to that point, fourth most assists all time with 2,394. Just from a playmaking standpoint, for others, not just herself, what kind of comes to mind for you with DT on that?
Her being responsible for so many points on the court. And when you do if you add up those 3-pointers that you just told me about, and then those assists, I mean, we're talking about easily 4,500 points right there, easily. And it's an unfathomable amount of points that she's responsible for. She scored, but that she put other people in positions for success and set her teammates up. And, you know, that number is just a completely unfathomable number of how much she has put the Mercury exclusively in position for success through her ability to get her teammates in good spots.
Yeah, for sure. One of the questions that I always had on the back burner to ask Diana, if there was ever like a pocket of time where I could ask a question that wasn't specific to a certain game or what was trending with the team or the league at the time, I always wanted to ask her about what she saw when she started to see the exotic style of defenses that teams would throw at her just to try to throw her off her rhythm in some capacity. Most of them just didn't work. And if it did work, it didn't work past one or two possessions because she figured it all out. Any Rubik's Cube opponents threw at her, she boom, 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 figured it out, and now she got 30 on your head. Or she got 10 or 15 assists on top of that. I was curious. I always wanted to ask her about that and how she kind of gauged it from looking at other players in the league, because I feel like one of the biggest things that scorers in particular struggle with once they get to the professional level is shouldering the brunt of all the attention that comes with being able to put the ball in the basket to those prolific levels. Um, you have to figure out how to be able to pass the ball out of those scenarios and do so effectively. But in addition to that, you also have to balance that duty because your team still needs your buckets, but you can't hurt your team with the lack of efficiency and effectiveness in that part as well. Like you still have to keep the engine going, even if it's not you scoring the basketball directly. So I feel like she's a player that wore that crown as well as any player, again, in the history of basketball itself, not specific to women's basketball, just generally speaking. And who knows if she's walking around with the Footprint Center someday and I get to brush shoulders with her again, I would definitely try to take that chance to ask her, because I know if I was a younger player coming into the league, that would be the first person I'm hitting up. Like, hey, I'm like, for example, with Anthony Edwards on the men's side, they talked about him hitting up Michael Jordan earlier this season because of the double teams he was seeing and just trying to learn how to better attack those scenarios. If I'm a WNBA player, there's no one else I'm hitting up from the guard perspective, especially first before Diana on that front.
Well, if you do brush up shoulders with her at the Footprint Center, I hope that she's wearing a really cool shirt, maybe one she got on the PHNX Sports website, out of the GOAT collection. This is something new and special that PHNX did a couple of months ago to celebrate the career of the great Diana Taurasi. These shirts are tight, y'all. I got the one in the top middle, but I do need that GOAT shirt, the orange one. That's too tight for me to leave behind. I'm gonna have to cop that on a real level. So I do hope to see Diana Taurasi in maybe one of her own shirts, though. That'd be kind of sick.
That would be dope. Another shirt I would love to see her in. First of all, that one, any one of those three, preferably all three in multiple moments. But what if she worked with the franchise in some capacity? I don't know if that's
I
necessarily
would
what she wants, so I don't want to speak for her, but she's a basketball mind that articulates the game and studies the game and knows the game so well that she would be very much an asset in any capacity, whether she goes to broadcast, which she's done before, whether she starts her own podcast, which would clearly do numbers, literally do numbers, or if she decided to be a part of the Mercury franchise in some capacity. I feel like there's no wrong answer for her.
Steven, I wanted to bring up, you reminded me, because the Mercury are right now tweeting out a bunch of iconic Diana Taurasi quotes because she's a very quotable player.
Yeah.
And one of those quotes is when asked about whether coaching was in her future, she said, No. I see myself transitioning to an island with a lot of coffee. So I don't know if she wants to get back into basketball immediately, but you are right. She is one of the smartest basketball minds that the game has to offer. But I thought that was a funny thing to bring back into the lexicon.
I say this in the most endearing way in respect to what she said. Diana's cut from a certain cloth that is as synonymous with basketball as any other cloth that any other athlete that's played the sport has been, tied to the game with. I can see her taking a break in some capacity because she's been at it since she was a young child. I don't know if she can ever step so far away as to almost completely removing herself from the game. And again, I say that with as much respect as possible. I feel like not unlike Kobe Bryant, where he didn't necessarily get into coaching on a professional or collegiate level, but she'll find some way to pay homage to the game
Mentoring,
that gave her
something.
in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's inevitably just in the stars for her to tap in with that in multiple respects. It might be just a ghost mentor that doesn't want public attention, but is helping players behind closed doors, maybe doing workouts with players as a consultant in some capacity. Maybe she does want to be on the coaching staff at some point. Maybe she wants to step back into the broadcast booth, potentially this upcoming March, or for March Madness and things like that, like she did last year with Sue Bird. Like, again, she's limitless in personality, in informing, in entertainment, in the draw from a crowd. You put her name on something basketball related, you're going to get all-time level views.
I want to ask you a question, Stephen. And, there's been a lot of change with the Mercury in this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, with the exception of Kalia and like Natasha Mack, we got a whole new team. So, that said, the Mercury's franchise player retired today. Do you think that that spot has already been filled for this season? Do you think that it's long-term filled? How do you think this is going to long-term affect that franchise player role for the Mercury?
Well, I always felt like when they traded for Kalia Copper, that was a sign of the times, and not necessarily saying that Diana was going out, but that they had their player that they identified as someone to bridge that gap, that if and whenever Diana did decide to retire, they had somebody that was cut from a cloth that Diana very much respected And you could go back to the quotes from the 2021 finals, and in every moment in which Diana and Kalia have gone up against each other, to Kalia actually coming to the Mercury franchise since 2021, just kind of seeing how the level of respect that's pre-existed before Kalia came to the franchise now, and obviously after last season, that's just gone up and up. And again, if you're talking about timestamp and bookmark moments, there's no better moment than the game winner that Kalia Copper hit early in the 2024 season, where Nate Tibbetts draws up the play for Diana Taurasi naturally, and Diana in the form of leadership, but also very much in the sense of changing of the guard, passing the baton on to the next. Says, no, let's run this play for Kalia Copper. She goes and does what she did. And Diana fades to the background, but is clearly like, yes, this is a perfect example of why I see you being the person that's gonna take this franchise where it's going past this season and past all of the years that I put under my belt.
You know, when you think of the Mercury franchise, you're so right. It's synonymous with Diana Taurasi's name, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also synonymous with winning. And so I think
Yep.
they have built a team now that is ready to win without Diana. And I think that that was not an easy task to, take on for any of this front office staff for the Mercury. And so I'm pretty impressed with what they've put together. Obviously, Diana will be missed on and off the court in more ways than we could ever, compute, but I think the Mercury is in a really, really good spot for the future.
They're in as good a place as they could have asked for if you were telling them 3 years ago that Diana would be retiring soon, and you had to make moves to set yourself up for success on her way out, but also existing past when she does decide to call it quits. And if you looked at everything that's transpired in terms of transactions from that point, if I'm talking about 2 years ago to now, I think if you ask them if they would agree that they like what they have, they would probably rebut and say, no, we love what we have. Because again, the Kalia Copper trade came out of nowhere. There was no indication that she was ever going to even be available, yet alone attainable in any capacity. So for her to choose the Mercury franchise the way in which she did, in addition to them then doubling down and going after her first season to get obviously Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali, there's an embarrassment of riches here that I feel like if you were asking Diana, what could they possibly do to transition, she would probably point to those two players as pieces that could help them do that. But the big thing, like you could look at their talents, you could look at their physical abilities and athleticism and their individual skills and the dynamics and how they all combine. But the biggest thing for me with those three in particular, it's all between the ears. It's that mindset, it's that mentality. Each one of those three are cut from a similar cloth. They're different, but they're also similar. Alyssa Thomas, I mean, she might be the one that bridges that as much as any one of the other two, but that's not to undermine what Satu brings. And it obviously is not what to undermine what Kalia Copper brings. So I feel like they've done a great job from the work ethic, the willingness to do the work, the buying into winning, the urgency. Like I feel like all of these things with those three in particular would match that culture that I'm talking about and that bar that was set from Diana Taurasi.
For sure. It sounds like there's about to be some ruckus in my house, so bear with me for just a moment. But yes, Diana, I do believe would be overall very satisfied with where the Mercury is at. I think the Mercury have a stellar front office. Can you guys hear this ruckus? You can? Okay.
Mm-mm,
Oh, no, you can't? Awesome.
I
That's
can't.
amazing. Great news. That's awesome. Okay. Well, like I said, Diana, it would be super satisfied with the overall positioning of this team. And I think, you know, and it would be hilarious to me to find out that Alyssa Thomas did not know prior to that press conference earlier this afternoon that Diana was retiring. But she said it herself, like this team is very much ready to win now with or without Diana. So I think that we're in for a heck of a season with the Phoenix Mercury, and this ending of a book, beginning of a new chapter is going to be one that is going to be remarkable for the entire league as a whole, not just the Mercury.
Yeah, I cannot agree more with that. Again, for Diana, she left she left no stone unturned in her career. She left it all out there. I don't feel like she's retiring with any regrets. And my favorite part, which you opened the show with, which if we're closing, I'll just briefly mention. I love that such a great talent can go out on her own terms. And I personally, just as an athlete and as a fan and as a media member, hate to see when players can't go out on their own terms, because it feels like there's, especially for someone that's always found a way to win, you can never count out a team that has her on their roster. And for her to be able to make that happen and do so on her terms and be comfortable with where she's at and comfortable saying enough, I'm done. Um, that's everything for me, and that's all I could wish for her. Because for someone that's won so much and won at the highest levels, what more can you ask for them? That's for them to be able to kind of go out when they're ready and not for anything to be taken away from them. So, salute to Diana on that.
Yeah, like you said, a huge salute. There are so many things that could have been had happened out of her control that it's a huge blessing in itself that she was just able to take the step back when she was ready. You know, this will not be our last conversation about Diana Taurasi. This is a PHNX Mercury show after all. There will be, I'm sure, multitudes of episodes this upcoming season where we talk about how much Diana is missed and so on and so forth. And there's so many more off-season episodes to come. But I think we had to hop on here today and just get our overall feelings out. I feel like every show we talk about how, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have an emergency pod soon because Diana's gonna retire, or something could have happened, something could happen. And I don't think any of us, like, at the beginning of this week expected it to be right this moment. So shouts to Diana for keeping things exciting, whether it's in the WNBA or even now when she's out.
That's what she does. She's just a light in all of basketball, a light to the history of the game. You can't tell the history of the game on either side or comprehensively without her. And again, just salute to one of the greatest to ever touch a basketball, the greatest to ever put on sneakers. Great career.
And Stephen, you spoke to her being so ingrained in Mercury culture and
Yeah.
Mercury history.
Hmm.
I wanted to bring up another one of the quotes from that same thread. During the WNBA championship celebration in 2014, she
Hmm.
famously said, "That was the luckiest day of my life to be drafted to the city of Phoenix and the Mercury organization." So I feel like that was just a
Wow.
good kind of cap on that, because she is so ingrained in not only the team but the city of Phoenix as well. Like this studio is called the GOAT Studio. The one that Steven's sitting in is
Hmm.
dedicated to Diana Taurasi. So it's just, she is very much ingrained in the culture of this city as well.
To that point, is she the greatest athlete in Phoenix sports history?
A six-time gold medal winner. I don't think there's really many more accolades I need to list for the argument to just be yes. You know, you can
I
go
mean,
down
how
the
many other athletes
MVP
from
championships, but like six-time Olympic gold medalist. That's how many people can last that many Olympic cycles?
And that's my point in bringing it up as a topic, because obviously I'm new to the Phoenix market. For y'all that don't know, I'm here from Chicago. Um, but Diana, like, from my perspective, who is more synonymous with their general sport, not just the not just the actual franchise that she's playing with, like that the sport is in and of itself. Diana's just she's just different, man. We could spend hours talking about just her greatness, but to that point, I personally feel like, and I've done my history on the athletics of Arizona. Again, for y'all that don't know me, I've known a lot about Arizona sports for quite some time before I actually got here. But again, I'm still an outsider speaking on the inside. But Diana's it. Diana's it. She's the one. The winning on the international circuit, the winning on a circle native to Phoenix and Arizona sports, the impact in her individual sport, the greatness, the all-time great status that she has. Ain't no blemishes on her resume.
Yeah. I see some comments that are not exactly the most polite and kind toward our goat, but uh, the numbers really speak for themselves. We could talk all day about accolades, but she did all the talking that she could ever need to do on her own behalf, and she made sure that everyone knew she was the best. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about her. And I saw a comment earlier. I'm not sure who left it, but someone said that she was always willing to be the villain, which I don't ever think that she never necessarily was hated, or the villain was the right word per se. But that's 100% correct. If she needed to, she would be. And I think, when you're a franchise player, you have to be able to take that brunt of, whether it's the media, the fans, the front office staff load, but the brunt of being the face of the team is it's a hard feat. And she took that for a very, very long time. And she was never ever afraid to say the wrong thing. And she said, exactly what she meant. And I think that there's incredible value to that.
Can't always be liked, but she was always going to be respected. And I think that's one of the biggest marks of a leader right there. Can't be a crowd pleaser, can't be a people pleaser, because that's going to get you caught in limbo. Can you balance out being liked and being respected? Not going to always be able to be liked in all respects, especially if success is the ultimate goal that you're working towards. But if you're respected, it's going to come with a certain level of dynamics that are going to help you get to that ultimate goal, whatever capacity of work it is you might be in. So again, just another one of those rhinestones on her crown, talking about her leadership and talking about her all-time level status as an athlete and a basketball player. Salute to Diana Taurasi.
Well, before we get out of here, I do want to give a huge shout out to the whole back staff at PHNX: Shane, Leah, Emma, Steven, myself, for all making this possible at a short notice. This was
Kevin.
a pretty chaotic hour and a half. Yeah, did I not say Kevin? I thought I started with Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. Kevin.
It's all
Emma,
Huge
good.
you got to
shouts
mention
to
It's
my
Emma
all
boy
too.
good.
Shout
Kevo
out
It's
Emma.
all
Post.
good.
Kevin, it's because you usually kick me off the other show that we do together, so I had to make sure I get my lick back on this show. But needless to say, like, it's been a chaotic hour and a half for us. So huge shouts to all of you guys for getting on, Stephen and I, and helping us out and getting on the show with us. It's a huge honor to be able to be the people that deliver you guys this news, and quite frankly, attend the funeral with you guys for the Valley team that was, right? So huge shouts to all of you guys for joining us in the comments today. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe to PHNX Sports. Uh, don't forget to head over to phnxsports.com, where I'm sure Steven is going to have a written piece, working out about this. And if not, there's already so much about Diana Taurasi on that website. You don't have to search far to find it. But again, shout outs to you guys for joining us. And we will actually be back with another episode next week on Thursday. So pencil that into your calendar. As soon as we have the time, I'll let you guys know so you can write that in pen instead of pencil. But until then, is that it? Have I
That's all we
forgotten
got.
anything, Stephen?
That's all we got for
All
now.
right, guys. Well, thank you, and we will see you guys next week.
We all silly like the mayor.